Welcome to the Mark Faris Experience, your ultimate guide to business and wealth building. Today, we're speaking with Mike Heddle. Mike is a top 1% agent in the GTA. He's won multiple awards. He has over 20 years' experience as a business leader, real estate broker, and has currently a team of 9. And currently, actually, over the last number of years, he's just consistently selling well over $100 million a year in real estate. So we're super excited to dive into Mike's origin story and then how he was able to be successful starting this business from scratch. Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. It's an honor. I've always appreciated our friendship and looked up to you as industry leader and just a very inspiring and all well-rounded individual. So thanks for having me on today.
Well, Mike, we've been close for a number of years. It started back at the chairman trips back in our real estate company. When I was with Royal LePage, we were the kind of the young guys of the group, and we got to share a lot, and I got to see your growth through the years as well, and equal respect on your end and what you've been able to accomplish. So, Mike, I really want to know, and that the listeners want to know, how did you get to where you are? And maybe we can go back to the origin story of what made you get into real estate and start your own business, and maybe take us through an early struggle story that you had to overcome to, we'll say, get the airplane off the ground of the business side.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I kind of stumbled into real estate, I'll say. I was in my last year of university, and I had a friend who we're still friends with and do some business with today, decide that we would get our real estate license. And right around that time, it was my fourth year of university. I spent some time down in Panama with my father. And I grew up in an ecosystem or environment of physicians. My grandfather was a GP in Stony Creek, Ontario, back in an era where doctors made house calls. He delivered people sometimes at their home, and my father was a surgeon. And when he took calls in the middle of the night, it was for really important things, like a child had been in a fire, or somebody cut off their hand. He was a plastic surgeon. So, kind of this interesting mix that served me well today is, I take calls all hours of the day. This as a trading real estate broker. I often joke and go, the difference between what I heard as a young lad and what I experience is I'm not saving people's lives. So that really kind of, I think, has helped ground me or put into perspective what I do for a living, serve others. But, that vintage or lineage of my grandfather making house calls in a small community where there are only 2 GPs in the area. So, interestingly, although I grew up around all of these people in medicine, my mother was a researcher, I stumbled into real estate both in my last year in university, spending some time down in Panama looking at different investment opportunities, and I kind of came back and thought, like, I want to be an international real estate developer. Can you imagine that? Like, where do you learn how to do that? I had no idea where to start, so I started by, learning about real estate. I had no context. I had nobody that knew anything about real estate. And as I started selling, I really enjoyed what I did. I spent a lot of time in school. I actually did spend time obtaining 3 degrees. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I first started in Sheridan College's animation program, which was the most competitive art program in the country back then. And after a month of sitting behind a desk drawing, I realized that wasn't for me. So I then got into economics and engineering. So this really, uniquely wired brain that has some creative side to it, and also some very engineer or order of operations mindset has served very well in this business of selling real estate.
Well, so was you and a buddy were you guys just having a conversation, said, hey, let's get in. I know there's that development space that you wanted to learn about, but was it just like a moment where you're just having a beer with a buddy and said, hey, let's get into real estate together? Or is it, how did that that
This was a
conversation go?
lifetime ago. So putting myself
Yeah.
through school, although I had opportunities for bursaries and whatnot, I worked in some of the local pubs
Mm.
and bars. So, we actually, bartended and bounced, had doormans. And you actually know this colleague. I won't drop names, but he's still he's in the real estate industry in a very different capacity these days. And I think we just kind of, thought alike. We had this entrepreneurial spirit. Most people get into real estate because they want to make lots of money, right? You think like, selling real estate is going to be the vehicle to making lots of money. That's the hard way to go about it. And really, it was just getting into the industry to learn. I'm a information gatherer. I'm a seeker of knowledge, and it's served me quite well. I think because I've got that entrepreneurial spirit. I like leading others to growth. So that we can kind of chime into the team concept. But I'll share a cute story that I attribute to taking the aircraft off the runway. I just got my license and I was visiting my folks, and my sister was also around visiting. It was a holiday season, whether it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I decided to have a nap one afternoon, and that was 20 years ago. I think that's the last time I've had an afternoon nap. And I received a phone call from an unknown number, to which on the other end of the voice, I heard somebody say, I'm looking to speak to Mike Heddle because I want to sell my home. This was my first call ever, the first lead I'd ever received. And like most new agents, I don't think I knew what to do. I scrambled to find a pen and a piece of paper,
Yeah.
only to hear my younger sister on the other end of the line say, it's dinner time, get downstairs for dinner, butthead.
Yeah.
And like that resonated with me, man. I was like
Yeah.
mortified. But today I look at that and go like, no matter how hard I look at this phone, I'm not going to make it ring. Like I can sit there and wait for the phone to ring, and you got to go out and do it. So way back then, I'd put a relationship in place with the Faculty of Medicine at McMaster University, and we started recruiting and landing some of these world-renowned researchers, physicians and academics and professors in the Hamilton area, showing that Hamilton was more than a steel town.
Mm.
And I owe my sister for that phone call because it kind of got me to take action and recognize that no matter how many billboards or bench signs or flyers I put out, my business was built on using a referral base. So creating
Well,
relationships so that my phone rang.
for sure. And I want to dig into that. And you also said something about real estate as well, that selling real estate is really not the vehicle for creating wealth. It's a great income source, but we're gonna circle back in regards to what is the ultimate vehicle that you believe is. So we'll circle back on that a little bit later in the conversation. You had shared your very first listing call, and it was very similar. I remember I was on duty, and I had a first listing call come in, and they said, "Yeah, we like to get a CMA, which is a comparative market analysis, right?" And at the time, I barely even knew what a CMA was, and I hung up the phone, and there was a top agent. He was like one of the top in the area. He was walking down the hallway, and I stuck my head out the door, and I said, "Hey," his name was Todd. "Hey, Todd, is that how do you do a CMA?" Right. And it was the same thing, kind of scurrying papers together, slapping it together and running out the door. But the kind of the point of the story, if you're listening, if you are in real estate or you are an entrepreneur and you're just getting that first call, like it is awkward for everybody. That very first call, that very first client, that very first customer. So cut yourself a little bit of slack, and that's the starting point. But what Mike was saying there is that taking action and just getting out there is key. So that'll be a good pivot right now, Mike, into you really started specializing, you found a niche. So you started building relationships, going out with these renowned, experts, professionals in the area. And especially with your background, with your family being in practicing physicians, so you saw the benefit of networking with these people. So maybe can you talk a little bit about what was kind of your differentiating factor that really helped you get off the ground, because it's very difficult when you first start to have an edge, especially with so much competition out there. What was your approach to that you think helped you get past that first kind of bump when you first started?
Yeah, I think it's as I reflect back now, that hunger when you get your real estate license or you start your first business is something that's beautiful because you don't know the beast or the monster or the machine possibly. I mean, we built a big business. We do roughly 300 transactions with 5 agents a year. Like,
Yeah.
um, boy, if I knew how much work back then it was going to be to get
Yeah.
here, I don't think I ever would have
Yeah.
gotten out of bed. So I think it's really important to just honor and acknowledge that you've got to have that naive hunger, I'll call it,
Yeah. That's
is
right.
nice and
Yeah.
really important. You know, I had a door open to me because of my center of influence, because the people I knew. But I'll never forget, you know, putting together a pitch and a proposal for the Dean of Medicine, and he's a wonderful philanthropist within the city. He opened his door and he said, "Mike, I've known you. I've watched you grow up. You've got 5 minutes. Don't waste my time." Like, he wasn't handing anything to me. And I put together, you know, a real nice pitch. Like, let me showcase. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. Yeah, you know, do I have to take these people out in a limo? Do I have to showcase? But I think part of what helped me be successful there was I knew the lifestyle. So what I could bring to the table, although I was inexperienced, was I knew the lifestyle and the neighborhoods and the communities that you know the medical community in Hamilton, you know, belongs to, and how difficult and long hours, and you know what schools, and I think that was a unique value proposition. And I also think just that willingness, which hasn't changed today. Yeah, you know, I've just come from the office, you know, taking out the garbage. So, you know, I'm being on ground floor and going 40,000 feet up. I've just got this real willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
So you had that sphere that you started with, say, with from the, but was there anything else you did to like really dive into that niche or that competitive advantage that you had, or was it kind of the sphere and then they started referring other people? What was there anything else that you did to kind of really dive into that niche?
I think that first vertical, you've heard me speak of kind of the pillars or verticals in which we built the practice, and there's about 5 of them. But that first one I'd call like institutional relationships. And some of it is having that background and understanding what they're looking for. You know, some of it is creating that rapport. So I'll never forget the first client that came in from Italy, and it was neat because he knew nobody. He knew the medical community that was trying to attract him, but he didn't have any other friends in the area. So I was able to create, you know, real deep relationships outside of the work relationship that client today is, you know, transacted multiple times and looked to invest in alternative investments, et cetera. So, you know, I think this is a business, and most service-based businesses are, you know, businesses of relationships, where, you know, you're always serving the client. I've noticed a shift in the last number of years where, you know, it's become, or it appears that it's become about, you know, how great the agent is and what the agent does, and the vehicle they drive. And I don't know at what point that shift in the industry as a whole has changed, where it's not about us. It should be about the client's objectives and needs. And I've always applied that kind of, I'll call it, you know, practitioner or consultant's approach, or, you know, like you go to your doctor, they've got a patient chart. It's not about how great the surgeon is. Sometimes it is, but it's about the patient's need. And I've always really had that perspective in a service-based business model.
Yeah, I've seen that you, Mike. I mean, real professional, but you do have a high standard that you operate on a day to day basis with. So here's something that I really want to drive the point home on what Mike did to be successful. He knew his, we'll call it an uncommon advantage. He knew what that was, and he really dove into that. And so just want to encourage you, anytime you're starting off in anything new, a new business or, you know, whatever it is, or even if you've been in business, but you just haven't been getting traction, everybody has some sort of uncommon advantage. And so if you look deep, so you look at your background, your experience, maybe there's a certain demographic, there's something there that makes you stand out, that you uniquely have a, we'll say, a differentiating factor about you. If you can figure that out and build a, we'll call it a value proposition that's going to be speaking to an ideal client, and focus your attention on that ideal client, you will gain so much further traction, so much faster if you do that versus trying to like spray and pray approach. Mike, would you agree with that?
You know, I could sit back and listen to you. I always give you compliments when I see you, and they're sincere. Like, you just have this great ability to, you know, really take a concept or idea and make it quite simple. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think of our team internally, and they all have internal, different skills. Some are great at calling, some are great at building rapport, like using that unique ability and unique advantage. And sometimes it's not for everybody, and sometimes there's a place. What I hear the other day somebody say, like, there's a place for everybody, right? Whether it's in an organization or in a community or in a family, like, we've all got these different roles and these different unique abilities. Some people may not be able to get up in front of 1,000 people like I do or you do and articulate, and that's great. That's fine. There's taking that unique ability and learning how to find, which seat on the bus that's leveraged.
So, since you've been in the real estate profession, you've seen kind of the good, bad, and ugly. Are there any misconceptions or, say, myths for, we'll say, people not in real estate where they look in and they see, the industry overall that, maybe you can clarify here for any of the listeners that are out there?
Where do we begin?
Yeah.
That's kind of a big overarching question. I think the perception on how much we earn is really, for the last decade been something that, I understand. We borrowed this from a friend of ours, both of ours. How do you deliver that $30,000 wow or that $50,000 wow? And for some reason in our industry, we're often rewarded for gross production. Or gross revenue. Like, our industry gives out awards for, the teams or the individuals that made the most money, but they often don't spend a lot of time assisting those individuals or those teams understanding, running a viable business. So you can make $1 million a year, but if it cost you $1.5 million to do it, I would just rather stay in bed for the day. It just doesn't make sense to me. So,
That
I
makes
think
sense.
that's a real big challenge in the industry is not only entrepreneurism, but running a profitable business that delivers profits. And
Mm.
we've borrowed so much from you. I mean, you're a not only a wonderful human being, but you've done so many good things for this industry that you level up those that are around you. And our friendship has helped me level up my game, right from certain models or certain ideas. So, I think there's a lot of them in the industry. I think the other one, I often joke with it, is like the number one agent. Like, I see a number one agent on every billboard that I pass. And I too am number one, but my language kind of will often shift in the sense that, like, I use that to get more eyeballs maybe on your listing. I've never saved anybody's life, so hopefully having a very humble approach to selling real estate, which is what we do. I tend to see some egos, in this industry and every industry actually for that point.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's where what's interesting. You gave quite a bit there. I mean, there's the whole gross first net is a big kind of misconception out there for sure. A real estate agent said they made a certain amount of money, but they didn't actually profit that, as in they're not paying tax on that because they have hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses. But I think that the humility side of it, I think that whole approach of I made this amount of money can give some agents a big head. But what was interesting that I've seen through the years, Mike, is that the ones that had that ego that they captured, or they say they fell victim to thinking that they're better than anyone else, that actually bled off into their business and people started to smell it. And I've seen agents that were at the top of their game and they ended up transitioning and they fell pretty quick. And so that's an actual internal, we'll call it misconception that, the best, they just have, they have this kind of strut about them, this arrogance. But what I found was generally the best that stay there long term, they're actually, just like you, Mike, somebody could just walk up to you and have a conversation and you're not like fluffing them off.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. The ones that do have the largest egos, I found, are generally not the biggest players in my experience.
I think you're right with that. I think when you've got, I mean, you've built an incredible business that most of us in the industry look up to. And then I take kind of some sectors of what I've been able to be privileged or fortunate to do. In 2021, the Royal LePage organization, named me the National Realtor of the Year, which is an accolade that I love because it's based on not production. It's based on, doing things like, influencing your community and giving back to your community,
Awesome.
helping
I
the
didn't know that.
industry.
That's great. Yeah, that because
Yeah.
there's, I mean, close to 20,000 agents, so
Yeah.
that's
Well,
incredible.
where I would use the ego, if you want to call it, in that component is like, because of this, I can now, people in Vancouver know who we are. They get a business to business communication. Like, because of that achievement, if you want to call it an achievement, which I guess it is, we're able to leverage that for our clients, which to me is what's really cool about those accolades.
No, for sure. And don't get me wrong, I think that like awards and overall achievement is a very, it will say, like, I found that the top agents are super competitive. Like if you go out into the forest and you got to go hunting, it's like you want somebody like that with you because they're going to go out and get it because they want to win, right? And so I think that there is that healthy competition. It's just when you're speaking with clients and you're speaking out there in the we'll say from a serving standpoint, you're coming with a like this humble confidence versus like, I know best, you don't know. And there's a divide, but the competitive nature of the real estate side, I think that can be very healthy for driving, going the extra mile when you feel like giving up, right? Because you want to play the competitive game and you're competitive. So
Without a doubt. I mean, I got into real estate not knowing truly what a realtor does, right? We do, the way we've taken our business to be able to produce, we've got layers behind our systems, we've got automations to certain communications. Like, scrolling the MLS is something that I might get to do once a month, right? Like looking at properties or showing properties. Now that's different. I've removed myself from, the field to some capacity. But boy, I had no idea what it was in for, and it's fun. It is truly an industry or a business.
So let's dive into that a little bit more. So, say a new agent starting or any entrepreneur starting a business, what are some of the biggest things now you're 20 years into the business? What do you think are, say, a few of the top things that an agent would need to learn and implement to be able to get from an individual agent to doing hundreds of millions of dollars of sales in a year? Are there a few things that stand out to you that were the biggest pivotal changes that you implemented in your business to get to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to, the path and the journey. And I'm not sure that I'm the entrepreneur to be giving, advice as to how to do it. I can share what's worked, with me. I think some of them is like trial and error, like never giving up. I love that failure quote, something along I don't know whether it's a Tony Robbins or one of those guys that like, I haven't failed until I truly give up. So I'm not afraid to like just pivot a little bit if I need to. I guess some of the advice, like what served me well, I would say without a doubt is having good relationships. Actually, I'll go to one that I love. I'm in my office here. We've got these values. We borrowed, to a version from you, like having core values of the business. It's something we've coached with similar coaches. And as we went through this process, we created these values. Like on the bottom, our values like strong communication and strong relationships. And at the peak, those values land at things like great results and excellence. But one of my favorite values is the value of giving back. And it reads that we give more than we take in all aspects of our life. It's how we're perceived individually and collectively as a team in our communities. And that's a value that I think I want to truly convey and live my life with. And I'll tie that into kind of a concept I have of prosperity, that I believe to be prosperous, you've got to give more than you take. And you're going to go like, Mike, I don't know that I believe you on this one. Okay, like you've led me so far, you've given some advice, but give more than I take. I'll use my bank account, for example. In order for me to be prosperous in my bank account, I need to give more to it than I extract from it. My health, I need to give more time to it and dedication to it than I extract from it. My relationships, whether they're with my kids or my friends or family, I need to give more to them than I take from them. And when I say, that core value of giving back, we align ourselves with our community, with the Shelter Foundation, and the team. They've always got access to my time. I think that, to me, has been one of those guiding principles that has really led me in the right direction to build strong relationships and to never put my needs or my commission or my paycheck, my revenue before the objective, before the client's goal.
So I just gonna build on what you're saying, Mike, because this is such a powerful concept that Mike's sharing. So Mike is what he shared there. These core values, what's important for him. This is when you are going from an individual to building and hiring people. If you're not clear what your values are and what you stand for, it's very hard for people to be attracted and to really figure out who are you. So that Mike is so like ingrained on what these values are that are important for him. It makes him very attractive for people to follow along with Mike and to help within the business. And so that the core values are actually, if you're looking to grow outside of yourself, it's such an important part to pull an organization together so that you are all aligned with what is important for you and your organization. And I just going to just really highlight that point there, Mike, because that it so well means that you believe it and it's true for you and it's true for people when they hear you. And so that to me is a very sticky thing, and it's not fluff, it's real. And so the key with these values is it doesn't really matter what they are as long as you really truly believe them. Like Zappos, if you walk into their organization, their office, they're like, it's all about having fun and it's like craziness and there's like decorations everywhere. They're in the jungle in the office. That's those core values. Professionalism is one of our, like, that's something that's important for us, one of our brand prompts. So we wouldn't be having that in our office. That would just drive me crazy. But having core values and being able to communicate them effectively, just like Mike did, like that was beautiful. And just to really highlight that point there, Mike, you did a great job with that. I think that's so important.
I love the way that you've pulled that in, but I think that's also a great point around a team. Like if there's more than one individual, I mean, we find ourselves often weekly, when there's problems presented, like it's right there, it's on the wall. Like, how do we answer this problem? Between our values and our guiding principles.
Yeah, so powerful. And I think a lot of companies miss the point. They'll hear you say something like that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I get it. Core values, okay." Or they go to a conference like it's all about core values. And they're like, "Yeah, everybody's riled up," but then the implementation is the missing part. But there's just I've seen so much success. Like I'm hardcore in that just because I've seen it. And we actually went back and we created these family core values and I started implementing it. And I'll share that story maybe with you guys another day, but it's powerful, not only in the business, but you can take these values and apply them to personal and your family as well.
Yeah, I love that. You've shared that with me. So I think your listeners would really benefit from you sharing that with them.
Yeah. Okay, habits, Mike. So you've been a very, we'll say, super successful entrepreneur. Are there any regular habits or routines that you've implemented that's really been able to boost your productivity that our listeners could benefit from?
Yeah, for sure there are. And, over 20 years of doing this in this business that, I think one of the interesting thing about a results-based, sales-based business, can either provide or really be frightening about is like every morning I wake up, I'm unemployed. Like I don't know where the next listing is, where our buyer is. You've got to have a real strong drive. And I think it's easy to stumble upon burnout in many entrepreneurial roles. So I think like for me, the habits is one that just helps provide longevity. And I've gone through a number of habits, starting with, Kathleen Black had taught me, first time I'd experienced, creating, I think she calls it the ideal week or the perfect week, time blocking. And then if you take a guy like Michael Hyatt, we use a full focus planner inside here because it is brilliant on habits. And I think some of the habits that have resonated most with me are some of the rituals, like your start of your day ritual, planning out what the start of your day looks like. So for me, lately that's waking up with some cold, moving, getting some moving and some stretching and breath work in, and then serving the family, soon getting the kids off to work or off to school. So planning your morning ritual and your evening ritual, that's been another big one for me. A little bit of meditation or sauna in the evening. But the same with work. What's your work startup ritual? What's your end of day ritual? So, the ideal week where you're kind of time blocking your time, I think is really important. But I would say taking it a layer beyond that, to the rituals, implementing the rituals and knowing how long those rituals take. And I know the first time I heard that, like, what are you talking about? I don't want a ritual. I don't want to perform a ritual. But we all do. We all have our rituals, whether we realize them or not. So I think those are a couple, and I would attribute Michael Hyatt and that full focus planner is an awesome resource.
Yeah, no, that's powerful because you nailed it. We all have habits. It's just what are going to be your intentional habits. And I think it's harder today than it's ever been with social media. I mean, we are walking around getting dopamine every time we look at our phone. It's like we're getting these hits. And it's almost like we're kind of drugged up in a way, because it's like, we get these kind of like quick hits of dopamine every time we check our phone, right? And so when you wake up in the morning, we have this like urge to check the phone. And when you check your phone, next thing you know, you're knee deep 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in to your phone. And then you're going to bed, and then you get pulled in and you're checking your phone. So you're constantly you're not going deep in deep focus work. And so that's why those rituals I think are powerful in the morning. Like before you check your phone, you do this, and this, and that's going to get your day off the right way versus opening, rolling over and getting your phone going. Because that's, if you speak to all the top producers in the world of what they do, that checking their phone is the last thing they would do. Is that your experience, Mike?
Yeah,
What
for
do you
sure.
what do you see?
I started chuckling
Yeah.
there for a moment because I was just visually going down a rabbit hole of somehow spending 20 or 30 minutes on Instagram watching the breakdancer, the Australian breakdancer. Like,
Yeah.
I will never get that time back.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I'll also kind of share something that you probably preach this. I mean, if I've been the beneficiary of hearing you say this, I'm going to share one of our first really kind of getting together and knowing one another was up north in Muskoka there. And
Mm.
I'll just share a very quick roundtable. We had about 5 of us, I think it was, from a top performing group, and we just mind shared, like share everything. And one of the biggest aha moments was that goal setting, and not only setting the goal and writing it down, and SMART goals. You've probably heard of, your audience has probably heard a lot about that. But when we went around the table and everyone kind of talked about the frequency in which we review those goals. I don't know if you remember this,
Yeah.
but yeah, I kind of went to the one party, and he checked his out, kind of like 4 times a year, and it came to me, and I kind of check mine out once a year, and you saw this direct correlation between ranking within the company. A
Mm.
friend of ours, who's top 10, he checked his once a week, and you're like, what are you guys talking about? Like I look at my goals every morning. I think all of us were like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
doesn't that resonate? Like, that's front of mind, and look at the success that you've achieved from back to rituals or habits.
Mm.
Having those intentional habits. So I wanted to share that story. I'm sure you've shared it, but boy, that was like, take my career on
Mm.
a relatively strong trajectory or path, and that 1 degree shift, you sharing that
Mm.
with me has 3x easily my personal achievements
Mm.
and career and satisfaction with everything, not just business goals.
Yeah. Well, it's cool you share that. It's interesting that it's such a simple practice, Mike. reviewing the goals on a daily basis and, writing it down on a daily basis. It's such a simple, it seems too simple. And that's the genius in it is that, that you wake up in the morning and if you focus on one thing every day and you set kind of your intention for the day of what you're going after and what your Napoleon Hill calls it a definite chief aim, like what's your one thing that you're going for, your overarching goal, it would make sense that you're probably going to arrive at the destination if you keep on kind of recalibrating and getting focused on that. Similar to, if you buy a new car, you end up finding that car
You see it
everywhere when you're
everywhere.
driving around
Yeah.
because you're in tune with it, right? And then after a while, you start to, not see it as much, but it's just very top of mind. But it's such a simple idea, yet it's so interesting. We get distracted with, trying to find this, this elaborate, creative, like,
Yeah,
hiding kind of
complex.
master key. But if you just do that one thing, you can really, get a lot of traction there.
There's
So
so much truth
yeah,
to that. I mean, we've adopted
yeah.
that into our practice with all of our staff, and it's amazing as you see them achieve these goals, and they've never gone through that exercise. So, yeah, another chance to thank you publicly
Mhm. Oh
for
no,
your
yeah.
contribution.
Again, and this stuff there too. It's like it's all been all the insights. They've all been said before by somebody before us,
Sure.
or they've been said in different ways. And so it's like you hear something, and sometimes you got to hear. That's why reading a book a few times is actually a really good thing because you are at different stages in your life, and you just hear something different on maybe the third time. And so that's where it's like, that repetitiveness is, I think, is important because you change and grow, but you got to be open to it.
Yeah, to bring back, I don't want to steer back to my journey, but I think there's a couple of things that by me sharing might be impactful or helpful to some of your business listeners. We started with kind of that first vertical, like how do I make my phone ring, rather than me just kind of waiting there. I'll give you kind of the short version of this. I continue to build a couple of relationship-based affiliations, I'll call them, or partnerships. The first being that McMaster University. From there, I kind of spiraled into watching this investment network, the Lifetime Wealth Academy. They were originally called. The name of them now is Keyspire, like the country's largest network of Canadian investors. We watched them grow from 30 members to the thousands of members today. So that was another vertical. By building that relationship, they fed the funnel. They fed the funnel of client base for us. From there we followed up with relationships with builders, having a exclusivity for one of the premier builders in the area who are just wonderful humans, family based, saw hard working. So we created a bunch of these verticals that, fortunately for me, I haven't had to, take the risk of the fixed cost marketing in our business. The flyers, the signage everywhere. That's a really expensive avenue, as you talked about in kind of the gross revenue. Like you can easily spend $300,000-$400,000 a year on those marketing campaigns, and I think they're brilliant campaigns. But for me to grow the business, I wasn't prepared to take on that financial risk, and I went about it in a different vertical through relationships.
Well, and this is such a powerful point in business is if you can find an influencer, like what Mike did was he went to where are the barrels of fish, and he built a relationship with the person that would introduce him to the barrels of fish where these, say, investors are gathered, right? And so with you, as you're listening, really think about who has a network of potential clients that if you build that relationship with one person, you get access to all of their clients, right? And so that's such a great example, builders, and then that investor group as well. That I think that if you can really apply what else is out there for me that I can really dial into and spend, you could spend many hours working on that relationship because if you get it, it's like it keeps on paying dividends for years to come. That's so smart.
It's a gateway, and in fact, the fourth vertical there that I would call like agent referrals in this business is very common practice. I think I was naive in a lot of aspects of the practice. It was 2015 that I met you in Italy, of all places. We were able to start and form this friendship in these beautiful places around the world, and I didn't know anybody in the network. I didn't know who the big names were. Like I was just like stargaze, but not even. I didn't know that they were stars to begin with. I remember landing in Italy, going like, "What am I doing here? Like, how is this selling real estate?" To now the tune like that network feeds us, that barrel of fish, feeds us 20% of our gross revenue, because we've been able to establish professionalism and strong relationships and a pragmatic approach to serving the client, that that extension of the business is just trusted, and I'm grateful for that with all of our referral partners.
That's great, Mike. Yeah, great examples. What do you believe makes a leader great? What are some of the things that, when you think of the top leaders that maybe you look up to, and maybe that people would look up to you as well within your organization? What do you think makes a leader great?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm a leader within our tribe, our community here, and there are times I kind of go like, what makes me a leader? Like sometimes putting your name on the sign does, but that's not the way that I lead. So I think what makes a leader great is certainly the ability to communicate. And again, like as we just have this conversation between two friends here, but we've known each other's business. Like you have an exceptional you have an exceptional way of articulating and grabbing a high level concept and simplifying it. And I think that's one of the things that makes you a great leader, is that you can clearly articulate maybe a complex message, boil it down quite simple, and be able to, back to those values, have a very clear mission and vision for the organization. I think those are attributes. I also think personal characteristics. For me, that giving back, that serving. I borrowed this parts of this from different leaders amongst our industry. But when I'm asked to see my organizational chart, mine looks kind of like upside down, like it's flipped upside down. And you'll see our recent branding has a bunch of these. I'm going to deviate for a moment, and you'll see it all come together here. We went through a recent exercise on rebranding, and we hired a firm. And as we had conversations, some of the things they took away from us were like hardworking, and you guys are very data driven. They thought that we had both an impact on our internal culture and the communities that we serve. And they kind of came up with this theme of like a B apiary, like this hardworking approach, this network approach. And you'll see that in our branding. Our branding is very kind of like blue, data driven, clean lines, but these hexagons kind of link our network together, our communities together, and kind of inspired by bees of an apiary. And as I think of our organizational chart, it's very similar to that. Like I wake up every morning ready to serve my team, my community, and our clients. And I've surrounded myself, not linear, but interconnectively, like a hive, with our administrative staff and team. And they're also interconnected with our sales force. So, I think part of that mindset on that interconnectivity and the bottom-up approach has what's led me to be successful in leading this crew.
Yeah, powerful. Simplifying concepts, creating values, and then giving back, and coming from a serving, like you instead of you at the top on the org chart, you're at the bottom, and so you're the ultimate servant with that. So that to me, you did a great job there at clarifying that from a leader. What makes a leader great? What advice would you give? So an entrepreneur or business owner, whether they're an agent or an entrepreneur in general, okay, Mike. So they have excess funds. They've been investing in themselves. They're growing their business, and they have some money, and they're like, what should I do with this? Should I go to a financial advisor? Should I invest it, in stocks? What is your experience on helping them or giving them some advice? I mean, you've been in the business, you've been in the investing world. Like I would classify you as definitely not an average agent. You're a specialist in investing overall. So, what counsel or advice would you give them to help them grow their wealth faster and safer?
Yeah, I'll share. I don't want to take too much time, but I'll share kind of some of the journey. So, growing up in the environment I did, I was privileged in the sense that I'd work hard. But the first job I got was at the age of 12. But I got to sit down with my parents' financial advisor at the age of 12 as well. That was the year that The Wealthy Barber came out. And their advisor's name was David. He gave me a copy. Young guy, interested in finance, and I read The Wealthy Barber at the age of 12. I try to read that every year still. And what I think I took away from that at that age was to start investing young. The principle of pay yourself first, I loved. Make sure that you pay yourself first or put some money in investments because everyone else is going to get after it, right? Taxes and the grocery man and the gas pumps, they're all going to eat away at that. So pay yourself first. And then the second concept was compound interest. And that was mind blowing to me. He showed me a graph of if I started to invest at the age of 20 and I stopped at the age of 30, and you watch the compound interest versus you that started to perhaps invest at the age of 30 and keep going until you're 65, he showed me how both those graphs were the same. And at that point, I was hooked. I've been an investor my whole life. I started putting 10% of what I've earned away at the age of 12, my first job. So this kind of like being in the real estate business has actually served very well from an investor's mindset, not just saying, real estate's the best vehicle to invest in. Because it can be, if it's right for the investor and their tolerance and the amount of funds that they've got. So we've taken this consultant's approach and really kind of, spread it pretty wide across our services, where some people it's right to be a landlord, but some people it's not. Some people can't manage tenants or can't bear the thought of, having to serve their tenant if there's a call in the middle of the night, or even worse, if you've got a problematic tenant, how to manage that. So I believe that real estate is an amazing vehicle for investment, from whether you're a landlord, if that's right for you, and that's not right for everyone. I invest in mortgages. I've done it for as long as I've been in this business. I like the fact that there's very little to manage. So if you kind of look at the continuum, like of investing in real estate, like on one side is very active, like owning bricks and mortar. It's going to, you can use some sweat equity, and then you start to move towards things like, private mortgages. And again, making sure that you're aligned with the right people. We've talked about your network and aligning with professional and trustworthy people. So all the way to the other side of the continuum, which might be a REIT or land development. And I love to watch as you continue to grow one of your practices. I think you're right on point with offering services or products for various investors. It's not a one size fits all. And I think when it comes to the foundation of investing, like diversity is really important, right? You shouldn't be all in stocks, or you shouldn't be all in cryptocurrency, or you shouldn't be all in real estate.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's where I think you nailed it. It's like, what is important for you? What's the goal? You had said the pay yourself first, compound interest, super important. And circling back to what is important, like if, say, real estate is something that you're really interested in, but you just don't want to be a landlord, or you can't find great deals. That's what this other vertical that Mike had referred to, Faris Capital, that's what we're really serving that niche on helping these, investors that love real estate. They've done really well. It's just they can't find great real estate deals, and they are tired of being the landlord. So I think that advice that you gave there, I mean, that book, The Wealthy Barber, that's a classic, right? So very powerful, Mike. Great advice.
Yeah, I think, we've seen kind of the rush of people get into multi-unit properties. I mean, we specialize in that. We started putting out a communication that we assess the best investment property in Hamilton, Brantford, and St. Catharines. And each week we deliver it on a silver platter. But that's not right for everybody. Some people are looking for cash flow. If you're 93 years old, and you need cash to live on today, like a land development deal that might take 5 or 7 years to mature might not be the right investment. So, it's assessing the client's needs. And I think this is kind of that, right back to the beginning, that overarching, concept of, I think what served us well is being consultants, always putting the client first. And if they're interested in real estate investments, we sell bricks and mortar. That's how I get paid, but that might not be right. So we built strong relationships with the professionals that offer the right product to help that client achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, what are you excited about right now?
A few things. I mean, we're in the midst of a challenging market. So when I look at my practice, we've got some market conditions that have been challenging, but we're doubling down. So I'm excited for some growth because I see big opportunity for practitioners like myself to pick up market share and help raise that standard of service that's in the industry. The investment stuff's always been what excited me. I mean, that's what I got into real estate in the first place for. So I'm excited as we're exploring some avenues with some development firms, because I think that's kind of I think we're going to see this big opportunity, and we're in the early days of private equity really being at the forefront. I mean, Tony Robbins' most recent book is talking about private equity. So I'm excited to see where that goes within the industry, because I think there's some players like yourself and myself that I think can help influence and drive that industry the right direction.
Yeah, very cool. And it's such a great idea here. When you see a market that's maybe not strong, you have somebody like Mike this is a half glass full sort of approach, and this is a great time to take market share. And so I think that's just such a consistent theme that I've seen in top producers. It's like, there's opportunity everywhere. And so that's just a really good takeaway, Mike, that you shared. You ready for a rapid fire part of this of the talk here, Mike?
Yeah, let's go for it. I'm quite pragmatic and analytical, so I may pause. Pause before I give you an answer.
These are all straightforward. So first off is, which book has had the biggest impact on your business or wealth creation?
Boy, there's so many of them. It's because it's front of mind. The Wealthy Barber. I'll share a very quick story. I know it's rapid fire, but I don't get starstruck. I was at an event. You might have even been there, and what's the other's name? David Chilton was there. And I walked up to the bar, and we grabbed a beer, and we both said hello. As I walked away, I thought, wait a minute. Like, if there's one guy that's had a big impact on my financial health, it's him. So I went back, introduced, and told him that cute story of being 12 years old and watching The Wealthy Barber. So I've got to give it to that because it's front of mind.
Well, and that's he was probably really blessed that you went back to him and you told him that story, right? How did he respond when you told him?
Yeah, it was pretty neat because I think a lot of people do get starstruck. Like, these are regular human beings too, right?
Yeah.
And it probably caught him off guard because I'm 6'3", like I'm a pretty big guy, and he's a big guy too. Like, he might be 6'4", and he's probably wondering, what's this guy coming back to me at the bar for? So.
Was he trying to hit on me or something? No.
I don't think he was thinking that, but he may have thought that he should have bought. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And you know what? I mean, it's pretty common. You run into a celebrity, and it's like, what do I say? I've had that before.
Have you?
I remember. It reminds me when I was a kid. I remember we heard that Hulk Hogan was in. He was in the hotel. He was staying there at the resort. So I think I must have been like maybe 7 or 8. And we were there waiting all day for Hulk Hogan to come down because we heard he was coming down. We were waiting in the lobby. And finally, we see this huge monster walking down the hallway. And we look up, and it was Hulk Hogan walking towards us. And he walked towards us. He looked at all of us. We're all like starstruck, mouth on the ground pretty much, jaw on the ground. And he's like, hey, guys, or hey, kids. Just super beautiful guy, right? And he walked by, and then he walked past us, and then my dad's like, "Oh, Mr. Hogan, can we get your autograph?" we ended up getting it, but we pretty much just walked by as like that starstruck. So that's it's kind of funny how we respond. But in your case, you took action and you ended up having a conversation. So it shares a good story, anyways, if you speak up rather than missing the chance.
Well, on that vein, I'll just share. I saw some celebrity. It was Hulk Hogan recently that grown men are saying, like, "I love you, man. You influenced my childhood." Like, what an impact some of these individuals and these leaders in different communities really have on all of us, and I think that's noteworthy.
Well, and also it's encouraging for us because probably there are others that are looking up. They might be, if you're listening right now, probably there are people looking up to you right now. And if they're not, that is a really good encouragement to get to a point where people are looking up to you so that you can impact their lives as well. And I think that's like a huge opportunity moving forward there, that you can be that leader for somebody else. And so, and when those opportunities come up and they come say hello to you, like, pour into them, right? And that is you can really bless people in a big way just by, kind of really, seizing that moment. Yeah.
Without a doubt, I agree.
Cool.
I mean, you have an impact. When I'm with you at events, I see you doing that to people. You do a great job, very intentional. So
Well,
we're getting away from rapid fire.
I
I'm
know,
sorry for that.
rapid fire. This is a whole other conversation. So, okay, second question here is, what are 3 words that others would describe you as?
I would hope they would be honest, kind, and gentle yet fierce, right?
No, 100%. Solid. Okay, we got the 3. And last question is, what advice would you give your younger self?
Boy, just go for it. Just do it.
Do
Byproduct
it.
of that vintage, right? Nike slogan. Don't think
Yeah.
about it. I've done a good job of that, but if I didn't pause as often, like, just do it. So that's
Yeah.
such a great iconic saying.
So simple. Yeah. So profound, though, and so powerful at the same time. Very cool, Mike. Well, this is a great conversation. Time just flew by. Listeners out there, how can they get a hold of you? Maybe how can they get on that list that you were talking about? And how can they reach out to your team if they're interested? And so Mike is serving maybe you could tell a little bit about the area that you're serving as well, in the Hamilton and surrounding area.
Yep. So I run a team within LePage. We serve a large geography. I'll call it from Brantford to St. Catharines. Our social media is okay. We don't put a lot of energy into it. I think the best nugget I can leave your audience with, and it's not a close. I mean, it might feel like it. I talked about that weekly silver platter, putting the best opportunity out there. I would encourage anybody in any business to take a version of this and implement it into your practice. It has served me so well. So if you go to www.dealoftheweek.ca, if you're considering investing in real estate in this region, that is a great vehicle to just use as a market education tool. But if you're an entrepreneur, like, sign up for it. Watch, get educated about how to invest in real estate. I think I'm leading with value there, but also take what I'm doing there and mimic it and model it, because it has been just one of the most consistent and value-packed communications that we put out.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Great job today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always great to spend time with you. You continue to inspire me, and I know if you're inspiring me, you're doing it to thousands around you. So thanks for everything you do.
Very cool. All right, guys. I hope you found today's conversation super inspiring and insightful. I know I did. This is powerful conversation here. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and share with others that might benefit from the insight shared today. Until next time, I'm Mark Faris, and this has been the Mark Faris Experience.